Hello my dear friends and welcome to my channel. My name is Barbara and today we're going to be talking about how to get in tune with your psychic gifts and abilities. So very excited to get into this particular video. This video is for you if you're interested in this topic. I have recorded a previous video way back, so I might repeat some things in this video here. You guys can kind of look at this as like a revamped 2.0 version. And I have another video. Actually, I have two other videos. I have one about divination tools that you guys can use for your psychic gifts and abilities and enhancing them. And then I have another one where I talk about the connection between a cognitive dissonance, trauma, your psychic gifts and abilities, and spiritual awakening. So all those videos I will link in the description box below. If you guys like videos like this, the metaphysical types of videos, I have a playlist for metaphysical videos. And as usual, anything that comes through is based on my own personal experience, observations, my own thoughts, ideas, analysis. So you guys can take what resonates and leave behind what does not, because especially in terms of psychic world and intuition and this entire metaphysical world, it's incredibly hard to teach. You guys can take these tools and maybe these inspirations to kind of get in tune with your psychic gifts and abilities, but at the end of the day, everyone's going to have a different way of receiving psychic information. And with that being said, I do believe that everybody is psychic. I know some people have different opinions about that. Some people say that you're either born psychic and you're only psychic and other people can't be. The way that I see it, especially even in terms of astrological charts and these types of things, I do think that some people maybe have a genetic predisposition to be psychic. Maybe they're more energetically open, but at the end of the day, I do believe that all of us are psychic, and if you really want to, you can get in tune with these psychic gifts and abilities. Now, what's really interesting about all of this is if we learn about religion and the religious scriptures, at least the original ones, the spiritual aspects of religion, before it kind of got into this whole broken telephone situation that it is today. If you really look at it and you kind of start to piece the pieces together, which by the way, I do have a video on book recommendations as well if you guys are into esoterica and learning about the different religions and the spiritual roots of them all. If you really start to study them, you will see and you will learn that they are basically trying to teach people enlightenment, how to get into those higher chakras, how to release the lower chakra wounds, the quote-unquote ego desires. But a lot of these scriptures have been interpreted in a way to benefit current individuals and the current system that we're living in. So I'm just gonna leave that there. That's just the way that I see it. So what does it mean to be psychic or intuitive? At the end of the day, everybody has that gut feeling, okay? You're either gonna pick up on a good vibe or a bad vibe. So we're all equipped with this. It's really for survival. That's really what it is. It is a survival mechanism. It is here to help us and protect us. Now, when you kind of develop these psychic gifts even more, it's kind of like a flower blossoming. And the more that you start to get into them, you can choose what you want to do with them. So when we have these psychic gifts and abilities, what are they really here for? If we really think about it, at the end of the day, it's really for ourselves. If you really think about it, you might have a specific psychic gift and ability in terms of helping people in one way, shape, or form. You have different types of psychics. So psychic gifts and abilities are on a huge range. I'm sure that if you guys clicked on this video, you guys will have learned probably previously the different names of the different psychic gifts and abilities. They're basically based on all of the senses. And they basically say that depending on your own personal way of receiving psychic information is the category you're going to fall under. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because as long as you're getting the information, you're still receiving it. So that's all that matters. But sometimes the names and the labels help us categorize things. And even in terms of like channeling and getting information, it's easier when you're able to focus on something. You focus on that one thing. They talk about this in Hinduism and yoga a lot of the time. Okay, they call it the drishti, the gaze. You focus on that one thing. Sometimes it was a flame. It could be whatever it is, an object when you're doing yoga. It can be something on the ground that you're focusing on, and you're kind of going through the breath work aspect of things. And all of this is helping you to kind of shift into that different way of thinking is really what that is. Kind of calming the nervous system down. I mean, it's done by design if we really think about it. The way that the world is to kind of keep people on that adrenaline high and go and kind of sucked into vortexes. Cities are very big for this, okay? They're very busy. So it's like you get sucked into that, and it's kind of like this high, right? When you're in this adrenaline vortex, constantly busy, doing things all the time. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But for you to get in tune with your psychic gifts and abilities, you have to be able to calm down, calm the nervous system down. I'm sure they have those terms. I don't know the exact terms, the sciencey ones, you know, the theta, brain state, and all these types of things. Basically what's happening is you are calming yourself down. That's what the breath work is doing. Calming yourself down, getting out of that intense adrenaline rush, hyperactivity, like overload, right? Overstimulation, whatever terms you want to use. And you calm down, and now you're able to shift. You're able to shift the way that you see things. So this could be either through that drishti, that gaze, you're focusing on that one thing. It can be through breath work. It can be through so many different avenues. It can be through fasting. It can be through just taking time to yourself, honestly. Because to really get in tune with those psychic gifts and abilities, what it all comes down to is you really knowing your own energy, who you truly are as a person, like really, really learning yourself. And then you're going to be able to differentiate. Okay, that's that person's energy. Okay, that's that other person's energy. It's not mine. And then the more that you elevate, right? I'm sure you guys have heard raise your vibration, raise your consciousness. It's kind of turning into a slogan, unfortunately, these days. The terms are just kind of thrown around, but this is really what it is. It's all about raising your vibration, coming out of the lower chakra wounds. And surprisingly, I talk about these lower chakra wounds all the time. I have not made a video about it yet. So eventually it is on my list. I will probably get into the lower chakra wounds in depth and what they are, but they're usually located in the lower 3 chakras. I will also put heart chakra in there as well. I'm not going to go too much in depth in this video because I have mentioned it several times here and there. So if you guys have watched my previous videos, you guys definitely know what I'm talking about. But kind of just like that brief bullet form version of it is really, we have the root chakra. The wound in here is anytime you don't feel safe, anytime you don't feel secure, anytime you're struggling with money or finances, anything that's survival, so food, shelter, that's all root chakra. We also have fear of death in here as well. Generational things, generational patterns, traumas, it's all in the root chakra. This is the lower subconscious as well. So anything that is not really brought to the surface kind of goes into the root chakra. So it's like when we look at the world and world events, for these things that people are unaware that they have, like these fears that are generational, this is why they are collective wounds. So because they are collective, it's easy to trigger them because some of them are like taboo topics. They don't talk about them. Things like fear of death, you know what I mean? So this is why we need to learn metaphysics and energy work and just understanding the metaphysical aspect of things. Speaking of, I do have a metaphysical perspective on death video, so that's also in the metaphysical playlist as well if you guys are interested in learning more about that. So that's a root chakra. That is one of the ones that really keeps people chained, okay? Keeps them chained to the physical plane, the physical reality, having to pay bills, having to pay for things, pay to exist, all these types of things. And that's all done by design. I will say that much, okay? I can't say too much, but I'll say that much. So you guys are gonna have to read between the lines, especially now, you know, you kind of feel that intense pressure starting to bubble higher and higher, and more people are starting to struggle in this particular area even more. And the whole reason for this is because we are kind of going through a collective awakening without saying too much, right? So when you trigger this wound, you pull people into their root chakra and then you can't go into the crown. This is something that I've just observed. I don't know if this is true. This is just what I've observed. I've noticed that the chakras are connected. So it's like if you're in your root, you can't go into your crown. Those two are connected. Sacral is connected to the third eye. I'll get into that in just a second. And then we have the throat is connected to the solar plexus chakra. So it's like when all of these are quote unquote balanced or in alignment, you're gonna come in and out of balance. Like you can't always be this like perfect person that always feels like good and high vibe, but it's a matter of reeling it back in. And this is why healing is really important. And this is why I personally focus mainly on healing. You want to come out of those wounds and go into the higher chakras so you can have that connection to the divine, the trust in the universe, God, creator, whatever term you want to use. So when everything's balanced, you're operating out of the heart space, and you need to be able to operate out of the heart space to get in tune with those psychic gifts and abilities so that you're not, let's say, operating out of the ego. If you're doing readings for people, you're going to really have to shift more so, let's say, into the heart space and put away your own opinion about things, your own maybe like egoic perception and these types of things. So this is challenging, absolutely, because we are human at the end of the day, but that's what I see a good psychic as. You're operating out of the heart space. You're not looking through things through an egoic lens, because honestly, like I have some psychics that I personally call 3D psychics, and sometimes those psychics, like everyone still plays their role. At the end of the day, like the 3D psychics, for me even, I've been going to psychics since I was like 18 years old. So I have experienced like a plethora of different psychics and readings and really understanding the psychic world and the metaphysical world. So these 3D psychics, and not that 3D is a bad term or that it's negative or that it's like lower class or whatever, we're not looking at it in that way. But the 3D psychics help people who are in that consciousness level. So I've gone to 3D psychics when I was younger and I was at that level of consciousness, and they helped me. Looking back, maybe that information wasn't correct for my perception of things now, but for the consciousness level that I was at back then, it actually really helps me. It helped me maybe let certain things go and move on and whatever it was. So that's why you have different people operating at different levels of consciousness. So you do have 3D psychics who are maybe more so earthbound, and you kind of go through the ranges. And this is again a journey for the self and a journey through the self, honestly, to get to those higher and higher vibrations. And I kind of feel like through the whole psychic journey, you eventually learn that the psychic information is mainly for you, is really what it is. And eventually what we all want to do in terms of our psychic gifts and abilities is take off those training wheels. So we want to eventually get off of like the tarot cards, get off of the pendulums, all these types of things. That's like very, very beginner level to trust your intuition. And the more that you trust it, the more that it starts to come through. And then you are going to kind of start to use these psychic gifts and abilities in different ways. The best thing to do is to surrender to the universe, God, creator, whatever term you want to use. And you can kind of say, use me as a channel for whatever I'm meant to be doing right now. Then you kind of graduate and you move on and you move on and you move on. So something important to understand about psychic energy is that psychic energy, creative energy, sexual energy, and healing energy are all very much connected, okay? So people who possess a lot of sexual energy are gonna have a lot of psychic energy, they're gonna have a lot of creative energy, and they're gonna have a lot of healing energy as well, which perfectly leads me into the next wounded chakra. So we're going from the bottom up. The next wounded chakra is going to be your sacral chakra. This is again a collective wound. So what's happening with this chakra? Hypersexualization and repression of sexuality and not knowing how to direct sexual energy. Honestly, I could talk about that energy for days, and I probably should do a different video on it, on how to properly direct your sexual energy, or maybe I wouldn't be able to do it on here. So I'll briefly touch on it. So this chakra is the most wounded chakra, and it's kind of interesting because everything that's happening in the world currently, I feel like we are like at peak wounding. We're moving into a completely different era. We're kind of at like the peak wounding in all of these chakras if we really think about it. We have the repression of sexuality and we have the hypersexualization. Both things are kind of shown either through media or culture or upbringing or religion, unfortunately. And it's interesting because it's like, again, I think what religion was trying to teach people, because the roots of religion are spirituality, I think what religion was trying to teach people was how to harness the sexual energy and how to keep it your own and be very sacred with it, at least, to basically use that energy for manifestation and for other things, because it is the most powerful energy. If we think about sexual energy in the literal terms, it is basically bringing through a soul, okay? It's bringing through a soul, it's bringing through life, it's bringing through creation in the most literal of forms. So you can actually use this energy to bring through other creations for yourself, for your life, for your own manifestations, whatever it is that you want to bring through. It's that creative energy, it's that creative life force energy. And this is why the way that I've seen it was that it's connected to the third eye chakra, because you have to have that visualization happening at the same time. You know, that's where your psychic gifts and abilities are, there in your third eye. So it's like if there's any wounding in the sacral chakra in any way, shape, or form, which as a collective, everyone has some form of wounding, because the wounding in the sacral chakra can manifest many different ways. It can go into codependency, struggling with vulnerability. It can go into addiction on a range, okay? So this can either be codependency in relationships, it can be codependency through substances, it can be codependency through thinking, scrolling, constantly checking people's social medias. It's kind of like the devil card, and the tarot is actually what I'm psychically seeing. Obsession, these types of things, but like in a negative sense, okay? So that's that wound in the shadow. So it's like you want to take that energy and then you want to focus it on something positive. So if you're a person who has obsessive tendencies, focus it on a goal, because then you'll be able to really bring it through and you'll be able to anchor it through because of the obsessive energy, but it's going in a positive direction. This is how we can kind of start to play with energy, is really what that is. So that's that sacral chakra. I mean, I could talk about it more, but I'm not going to go too much in depth in this video. That's a different conversation for a different day. So then after that, we have the solar plexus chakra. So this is the next one up. In here, we have the divine versions of these chakras as well, but I'm kind of just going over the wounds. So the wound in here is the ego, when it's in the shadow, when it's trying to keep you safe and protected, maybe chasing things for egoic reasons, fame, the money, the wealth, all these types of things. Because an egoic reason, let's say somebody said you couldn't do something and you're like, I'm gonna do it now to prove them wrong. These types of things. It's ego in that sense. Obviously, you still want to have the drive, you want to have the perseverance, but you want it to be heart-centered. This is what everything comes down to. You want things to be heart-centered, and this is where the struggle comes through. Let's say for psychics, and we go back to those 3D psychics that I was talking about, sometimes people can get sucked into the money wound. I've seen this happen a lot with psychics, right? Let's say like they're making their money this way and the focus is to make money, and maybe that's their intention, and obviously we need money to survive, especially in this day and age. Everything's becoming super expensive. That's kind of how they first of all fall into becoming scammers. They kind of start to see a wound that maybe a person has. Maybe the person is feeling very vulnerable, and they kind of first of all maybe create a codependent dynamic with the client. That is a huge thing that you guys want to avoid, is codependent dynamics, but again, that's a different video for a different day. That's something that can happen. So the client constantly keeps coming back to them. Maybe they say something to make them think like, okay, you need another session, or you need to come back to me for this, or it's kind of like you have to just constantly come back to me, or I'm the only one that has all the answers, or nobody else has this information. That's the thing. It's like with the psychic world, it's like some people, unfortunately, because of the plane, and it's been narcissistic, narcissism is in here as well in the solar plexus chakra. I have a video on that as well. It's all on my metaphysical playlist. So it's like we all struggle with this because the system is narcissistic. So you really have to be able to catch yourself falling into that energy, is really what that is. This is where the spiritual ego comes through. This is where people thinking they're better than other people comes through, because they might have some knowledge that maybe the other people don't. And it's like that's how you fall into the spiritual ego. I actually have another video called The Tragic Flaw. So it's like in that video, I kind of talk about like the wound and maybe the biggest flaw that you might have, especially if you're unaware that you have it. like being your biggest downfall. So for some people, their spiritual ego is the biggest downfall. It's like they think you have to dress a certain way to be a spiritual person or do a certain type of thing. Especially right now, we're kind of going through that vortex, I guess you can say. I don't know what the word is. Like, we're being pushed through, like the way that I see it, two funnels together. The old way of being is in this particular part of the funnel. Now people are being pushed through, I guess even the birthing canal is maybe a good term to use. We're being pushed through that to go into the other version of whatever that's going to look like in the future. With that being said, because we're in this, like, some people might even call 4D. So because we're in this like birthing canal, you have this mixture of like people learning spiritual truths, but also applying the ego to them. And it's like, we all have to go through it. That's really what that is. It's like, we have to go through this phase to eventually get to the higher vibrations and the higher dimensions and the ego-free zone. As long as we're on the earth plane, we're all gonna have an ego. The ego helps us identify. Yes, it sometimes protects us, although usually tries to keep us comfortable in terms of protection. But regardless, it's not something to be demonized. It's just like, you kind of want to silence it, right? So you can go into the heart space. And the reason I'm telling you guys all this information is that in order for you guys to get in tune with those psychic gifts and abilities and to be a good psychic and to be a good channel and to really harness that energy towards you, you have to be operating out of the heart space. That's what it all comes down to. You have to be operating out of the heart space. And it's like, we can all inspire each other. Like, that's kind of what my videos are intended to be, inspire you guys or plant seeds or give you guys ideas. But at the end of the day, it's like, every person should eventually feel empowered within themselves. That's what it comes down to. No longer needing any external thing. That's what I mean. Even in terms of like divination tools, at least the physical ones, where it's like they're confirming, like, it's very good for the beginning. Very, very good for the beginning. It's like training wheels. Even back in the day when I did Reiki, my ultimate end goal was to have clients leave, no longer come back to me. Because it's like, certain people, first of all, serve you for a certain period of time. Again, it's that vibe, right? Where sometimes people create like a codependent dynamic with people, and that's coming from some form of wounding. Down here on the earth plane, it's very linear. It's like, maybe you go to school, you graduate, you get your degree, you get your job, and then it's like a linear trajectory. The way that I always saw things was like, you complete certain things and then you grow and you evolve. So certain things are kind of like vehicles. They serve you for a certain period of time and then you move on. You move on to the next thing. So that's kind of where that ego comes through, because sometimes also in terms of like that example, people might feel like they have to work at a certain job for a long period of time because they've worked at it for X amount of years, or a career, or whatever it is, a label, a title, having some certain title that maybe you were working towards. Again, it's all feeding the ego is really what that is. So it's in every realm of life. That's what I mean by the narcissism. Not everybody's a narcissist. That's the thing. But everyone possesses narcissistic traits until they basically integrate this energy within them. A lot of people always ask, like, how do I integrate? It's awareness. Just being aware of this aspect of the self. You might have these shadows and not acting on them. So the more that time goes on, you pick the light version, the divine version of whatever the reaction would be in that particular situation. All of this is connected because it's helping you come more in tune with yourself, with your own psychic gifts and abilities, so you can be kind of equipped for whatever's to come. That's kind of what it all comes down to. I'm bringing it back to that. It's kind of there to help you be equipped for whatever's to come. And as time goes on, I always kind of saw it as projects or tasks. It's kind of like energetic tasks, at least. It's like you might serve people for a certain period of time. We have different types of psychics in this world. Some people help people cross over. There's that type of psychic. This would be, let's say, like a medium. Some people are able to see people who are stuck between dimensions, and they're kind of here to help them cross over. Actually, a really good movie about that was, I think it was called Ghost with Whoopi Goldberg, but it's a very good movie that shows you kind of how, let's say, mediumship works. And in the earlier part of the movie, she's kind of like faking it. So it's like you can't control it and you can't turn it on and off. Going back to the psychic gifts and abilities. So basically the way that the clairs work is like, whatever is your strength. So like, let's say you're a feeler, right? And you are someone who's able to feel a lot and you're open in that way, then you're probably going to be clairsentient, for example. Let's say you are someone who thinks a lot, and maybe you're a thinker and you question things and these types of things, you're probably going to be claircognizant. Claircognizant is when the idea comes through and you're just thinking about it. Okay, so that's claircognizance. Clairsentience is feeling, clear feeling. Then we have clairvoyance. That's, let's say, if you're someone who's super visual. Maybe you're in your imagination all the time and you're thinking and you're dreaming. I find that clairvoyance can manifest one of two ways. Either it can manifest that you see things through your mind's eye, so you kind of get these symbols. Even earlier in this video where I was like, oh, I was seeing the devil card. This is why it's good to know a lot of information, because that's how you're going to be shown whatever information you need to see is basically what that is. The best thing that I heard from a psychic teacher way back, actually it was a tarot teacher way back when I was learning tarot, she was basically saying to be a good psychic, you want to know as much information as you can, because the way that you're going to receive the information is going to be based on how you are as a person, right? So like, let's say you're someone who loves movies, if he's going to be a movie scene, if he's going to be feeling in a movie scene, let's say you're clairsentient, you're going to kind of related to that. Oh, I feel like Rose was on the Titanic and that's how this moment feels for me right now. Whatever. So that's kind of how it works. Let's say you love history. It's going to be a moment in time in history. So it's really, really important to have a lot of information, and overall it's always nice to be educated about things regardless, because the more that you know, the more you can start making connections. Connect this to that and that to that. It's like, oh my gosh, and then this means that, and then that means that. And you see that everything's connected, and then you really start to understand how this plane actually works is really what that is. So knowledge is power. It really, really is. And especially if you want to be a psychic and a good psychic, you want to learn about as many things as you can, because at the end of the day, also being a psychic means pattern recognition. That's what's going on, because this plane operates in patterns. And I don't know if you guys want to go down a crown chakra loop. That's my disclaimer right there. I'm taking you guys into the crown. But something that I've been thinking about recently is the whole concept of predictive programming. So I think to myself sometimes, and I'm like, are we actually psychic? Are we just remembering things that we've seen in TV shows? You know what I mean? And it's like, it's playing out, but it's like, it was predictive programming. So anyways, I'll leave that one with you guys so you guys can think about it. I'm making you guys think. Going back to the clair. So clairvoyance, there was the one where you can see in your mind's eye. Some people can see in the physical reality. Okay, so it kind of depends. There's a person, let's say like you're someone who would like be so freaked out if like somebody popped up in your living room. Well, probably you're gonna see them more so in your mind's eye rather than in the physical reality. But let's say you don't have that fear, right? It comes down to fear as well. Oh my gosh, I should have mentioned that as well. Fear is also stored either in the solar plexus or in the root chakra as well. So when you're operating out of fear, it's hard to get clear information, think clearly, to channel clearly, all these types of things. So you want to come out of the fear. I guess I did touch on it a little bit where I talked about being in the heart space. You want to come into the heart space and you want to come out of fear. And this is why, unfortunately, I'm back to religion, because a lot of things are fear-based or whatever it is. It can be any organized type of situation where there's some sort of belief system and a leader and whatever it is. When people are operating out of fear and you be the person that's telling them, if you do this, that's going to happen. And if you do that, that's going to happen. When you're operating out of fear, unfortunately, you're actually opening up dark energetic portals. But I'm not going to get into this video because I don't want to throw you guys into too much of crown chakra loops. I don't want to throw you guys into fear energy either, but that's kind of how it works, is really what that is. It's just how it is, okay? So it's like if you're in fear energy, you're basically in lower vibrations, opening yourself up to darker energy. So that's how sometimes the psychic gifts and abilities, people who are very psychically open, if they're operating out of fear, might go into like darker energies or be paranoid or these types of things, okay? Again, you guys kind of have to read between the lines here, but that's what's happening, is because that person is psychically open, but they're in fear energy, or there's a trauma there, or there's something that's unresolved. Back to healing. Healing is really important. To have the purest, most divine version of channeling, let's say, but of the self as well, is really what that is. That's kind of what it all comes back down to. It's like the fragmentation aspect of the self. When you go through trauma, when you go through these intense experiences, you fragment. I have a video on that as well. Just remember which one it is. So I guess you guys are just gonna have to go through the entire metaphysical playlist if you guys are interested in these topics. Next, clairaudience. Clear hearing, okay? So this is when you're able to hear things. So once again, if you're someone who's a really good listener, for example, or maybe you're sensitive to sound and you can really hear things, like maybe you have really good hearing in the physical reality, right? Like maybe you're able to hear like buzzing in the background, or someone's like phone beeping or car beeping in the background, but maybe the everyday person isn't able to hear that. Well, then you're probably going to be able to develop clairaudience, where you're able to hear even more. There's also clairalience. I'm pretty sure is the name for the clear smelling. So some people have like the sense of smell. So you have a strong sense of smell. Someone, when you meet them, if they have a bad vibe, they smell a certain way to you, or maybe you're able to smell them and the energy doesn't vibe with you, or maybe you go into a place and it just smells a certain type of way. It could happen this way. And then there's also the taste one. I can't remember the name right now. There's the one where it's like clear taste. So it's like, it's with the taste buds. Sometimes maybe you get like a gross taste in your mouth. Let's say if there's like bad vibe around, or like the area that you're in is shady, or whatever it is. It's a good way to kind of see which category you fall into. Eventually, you'll get to that point, take off the training wheels, and you're just receiving psychic information left, right, and center. You're in the heart space, and you're kind of being led basically by your higher self, is really what all this comes down to. We also have empath. That's unfortunately another term that has been kind of butchered, unfortunately, by the mainstream. I guess you could say there's been a lot of trends about it, and kind of people just overusing it. Empath is on a range, okay? So the way that I see it is like there's clairsentience, where you're able to feel things, but clairsentience you can shut off. I actually believe this might be different maybe from my previous videos. I think I used to think that you wouldn't be able to turn psychic gifts off. I still think you can't. I think you're able to learn how to manage them. So when you're an empath, basically what you're doing is you're transmuting energy through your vessel. What does this mean? You're probably gonna find yourself in dark areas, dark neighborhoods, be incarnated into a dark family situation, maybe like just dark people, like whatever it is, people who are lower vibrational. What happens is the empath merges engages with that environment, let's say, and then they're the ones that are transmuting the energy. Maybe they're the ones that expose it. Maybe they're the ones that speak about it. Because it's like anytime we're speaking, we're transmuting. This is why solar plexus chakra and throat chakra are connected, because it's like you have to have the confidence to speak. It's amazing because since 2021, I would say that was the 5-year, which is the throat chakra. A lot of people have been speaking their truth, speaking their stories, explaining things that have happened to them, sharing their ideas, all these things, right? So it's been a huge throat chakra opening in the collective. The more that we speak, first of all, you're purging, okay, because you're clearing it through your vessel. Also, you're helping other people in whatever way, shape, or form. Maybe people who resonate with you, resonate with your story, then maybe gives them the courage to speak as well. Because that's the whole thing. The throat chakra, interestingly enough, what I learned once was that the throat chakra is the spiritual chakra. And it makes sense. Kind of goes even into like that Little Mermaid movie where like the princess lost her voice. I don't know, it's something like this, like some sort of analogy that happens where it's like she lost her voice. So it's like the voice is really important. This is why it's connected to the solar plexus, because a lot of people might care about what people think, or they might feel affected by people's opinions or people not agreeing with them. That's not what's happening behind the scenes. So again, this is another wound, right? That has to be transmuted, because it's like, I have to have the confidence to be like, this is my opinion. It's all about strengthening the spiritual strength. The more that we strengthen it, the less external things can affect us. Strong boundaries are in here as the solar plexus chakra as well. That's kind of how those two are connected. And then when everything's kind of in alignment, you're operating out of the heart space. But keep in mind, events take place, so you might kind of be thrown off sometimes. But again, it's the journey of the self, right? So the more that you heal and integrate, the less you're going to be affected by these external things, is really what that is. So another thing that also happens when psychic gifts are underdeveloped, or you're unaware that you're psychic, or you're unaware that you're picking up on things and these types of things, is energetic overload. Okay, you feel energetically overloaded, overwhelmed. It's kind of like this cloud energy or like blurred energy where it's like you don't know who you are, or you've merged with people in your surroundings and these types of things. This is why knowing the self, clearing and taking time to the self, being aware that you're probably psychic, you're probably picking up on people's vibes, is important, right? You can't isolate yourself from society either. That's the other extreme of this energy, where it's like sometimes the energy gets overwhelmed and wants to go off and like live in the Himalayas by themselves. But it's like at the same time, okay, maybe that's part of some people's experience, like to live a life like that. But sometimes it is also kind of like a coping thing. 12th house people are definitely going to relate to and resonate with this for sure, where it's like you're just like overwhelmed. So it's like, especially if you have 12th house energy or you're psychic in this way, it's a matter of learning to manage it and a matter of learning to balance it and figuring out how can you use these gifts to operate on the physical plane and in this physical reality. So ways to close up your aura, basically kind of not be as energetically open. You're energetically open when you're picking up on all these things, is knowing the self, like I mentioned, clearing, cleansing, sometimes fasting. All these things are mentioned in religious scriptures, like across the board. Definitely watching what you eat, what kind of food you eat. I've noticed sometimes, like if you're spending a lot of time channeling or being maybe like in the psychic aspect of things, or just out of body, you might sometimes be craving more carbs to ground or whatever it is, right? So noticing these things, like intuitive eating, is going to be really important. What you're drinking, okay, alcohol, drugs, staying away from these things. So if you're someone who is psychically open already, it's like anything that shoots you out of body more actually aggravates that psychic muscle. That's kind of how I see it. It aggravates it more, and then you go even more out of body, and then you struggle even more to ground. So it's this whole push-pull, right? It's this game of the self where you're like trying to figure out, okay, I'm psychic, but how can I ground at the same time? And how can I use these gifts and abilities to benefit me most in this current reality that we're living in? Coffee is another one as well. Sometimes with coffee, what happens is like coffee gives you energy. So it's like a little bit is fine because a little bit can be grounding. It's balanced at the end of the day. It's like if you're having like 10 coffees a day and you're constantly hyper and you're hyperactive, it's then going to affect your sleep. And then your sleep being affected is a huge one. That whole nervous system being on a high energetically is really what that is, where you're not really resting. You basically have to have the time where you rest. Is really the whole thing to understand here. Rest, calm the nervous system down, and whatever that looks like for you. For some people, it might be exercising. If you have a lot of energy, exercising, getting into meditative states, however that might manifest for you, is going to definitely be really, really helpful if you are a psychic person, if you're maybe new on the journey and you're just getting in tune with these gifts and abilities. So that's the whole thing here. That's the pendulum swing that happens with especially 12th house people, I would say. Where it's like they're really involved in the world, they absorb a lot, and they swing the other way where they don't want to have anything to do with the world, and they go into isolation. They're just like energetic overload, right? But the 12th house person is healing. And anyone who has a lot of psychic energy is healing, which at the end of the day is everybody. As long as we're sharing and talking and communicating, it's like the circle society, right? Where we're all kind of operating in this circle, like sharing and communicating with each other and these types of things. It's all healing. The 12th house person or whoever, the psychic person, is actually meant to be engaging in the world because their healing energy is needed. So you have to figure out boundaries are going to be huge. Boundaries are going to be huge. Healing things like codependencies, societal expectations, taking time to yourselves, baths might be very, very helpful. Some salts, being by water, large bodies of water. Water is very, very, very cleansing, but that has to be a different video for a different day. So I think I should wrap up this video here because I have gone on for quite a bit of time and it's gonna take me a while to edit. So I'll keep some of these topics for another time. If there's anything that piqued your guys' interest, let me know in the comments below. Make sure you guys do like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of the day.